most of my hobbies have been work related. Being an ex, retail guy, it just seemed natural to take one of my hobbies, which was kind of like fun having motorcycles and riding motorcycles, and got my son interested in that. And I kind of paid him to take care of my stuff. I had collected a lot of stuff over the years. I think at one time, I had 35 Harley Davidsons or something in the garage. I got a little out of hand. My wife says I'm a little bit crazy. One day, it's just kind of morphed into a hobby, turned into a small little business at the house, and then it got to be such a big business we couldn't run it out the house anymore. I don't think Roswell was too excited about us running a motorcycle shop out of a house down on Roswell Road. So we decided to change, and we bought the building next door, which led to us ultimately 3 years later buying this building and owning a coffee shop. So I blame the motorcycle thing on me, and I blame the coffee shop on my partner, Colin.
What I do for fun is mostly ride motorcycles. It's pretty much most of my days off are spent probably cruising around, head up North Georgia, meet up with some friends, maybe grab something to eat at a restaurant, check out some of the sights. Aside from that, I enjoy just being outdoors. I like going hiking. Cooking is another thing that I enjoy doing a lot. That's why I spend some of my days off just in the shop, baking and experimenting with new stuff. That's what my brother and Aaron and I enjoy doing a lot, is just kind of coming up with new recipes and trying new recipes and seeing what sells and what doesn't.
I was an executive for Walmart and executive for Home Depot, managed and participated in the management of their merchandising offices. Kind of my second hat is to be able to, how to look at cool things and how to make them better, and how do you buy things and make them cool and then make them better. And motorcycles have nothing to do with coffee, except one thing. I have this thing about, if you create a lot of traffic in a building, anything that's attached to that building will probably get some goodness from that. When Jim, the previous owner, came to me last December and said, I want to retire, would you buy our building? I had no choice, but I had to, because they could have put a business here that's not conducive to, to parking spaces, and they could have taken all our spots. They could have blocked our building. They could have been lousy neighbors.
The coffee shop was an instant, that was one of our first thoughts, was like, oh, coffee shop, that's a great idea. Now what else? Like, what else could we potentially do? And we tossed around like nuts ideas, a tattoo parlor, a yoga studio. And at the end of the day, it seemed like it was a good fit for us. And the family that I come from, we are big into cooking. Both of my parents love to cook. My brothers love to cook. I myself love to, so it made sense.
I didn't want to open a restaurant. I'd never seen the success of a restaurant. COVID was going on, and when we first started, and we were nervous about if we did a restaurant, they might keep it closed. But we knew they weren't closing coffee shops. The
whole atmosphere of a coffee shop to me is really fun, really cool. It's relaxing. It gives people a sense of community, a cool place to hang out. And our shop kind of reminds me of like that Cheers vibe, where you walk in and like everyone knows your name and is like, hey, what's up, Jim or Joe, or hey, what's your usual for today, or can we get you something else? There wasn't really that type of coffee shop where we were at, and that we had a huge market to pull from that no one else was tapping into.
Colin had a really good thought process on what we could do. I had when I jumped on board, I think I had a pretty good thought process how should it look, and I have specific things I wanted to do. Colin sent himself to coffee school in Texas, where he went for a week down there.
I found out about a coffee school that you could take in Texas, and they literally lay everything out for you, from financial projections. They give you information. They teach you how to make all the drinks. They show you how to maintain equipment. They also give you ways to build that financial projection off of traffic counts and other things. They help you determine what are good locations.
He came back with a really good plan, and I made him count cars in front of the building. I made him have a clicker and sit over at the motorcycle side, and we watched all the cars that drove by. And
I literally sat in front of the motorcycle shop window from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. 7 days, 1 week, and sat there with a clicker and counted cars.
The city kept on telling us there's 40,000 plus cars that pass by every day, and we wanted to make sure that was right. If we were going to invest a lot of money we want to make sure that the cars were there, and they absolutely were.
Gordy and I sat down and decided, you know, who are we going to help with brand? Who's going to help us with branding and marketing?
And we hired a company called Big Red Rooster, and they had an assistant named Leah Miller. And Leah was great about reading our mind. And as Colin says, she's the hardest working person he's ever seen.
She's one of the hardest working, most creative people that I've ever had the opportunity to work with.
So we got her on board, and I sent her, I think like hundreds of pages of Pinterest stuff that I liked.
And so it was every week for about 2 months, we would get on phone calls that lasted a little bit over an hour. And they started with basic general ideas and what we wanted. And then by the end of it, you know, you go process kind of evolves. You start with like a really basic blueprint that's very elementary, and then by the end of it, you're walking through the space, and it's like a 3D virtual tour that they put you through. And you see the materials, you see literally everything in its place.
She was able to kind of, you know, manipulate my mind, my thought process, and Colin's thought process into what we have here today, which I think is a really interesting, unique building.
And then construction begins. So from there, you know, for us, we had to do demolition. So demolition ensued, and a month after that, construction. The company that we hired for construction, Trident, they were here every day with the superintendent on site. Never had to worry that things were getting done. So before we renovated the space, it was a kitchen and bath display store. So he had full kitchen and bathroom displays. So it was like a maze. It was really, really bizarre. It felt really small and very congested. And then once we started knocking down walls and seeing it open up, it was just like, holy shit, like this place is huge, like, you know, and you come to realize like, wow, like there's a lot here. This is, you know, gonna be a huge space.
There's a few things that were, you know, non-negotiables. I had in my mind the concrete floor, polished, because we did it at another business I own. And
Gordy his attention to detail is amazing. Nothing slides under the radar for him. If he's focused on something, he's focused on it.
you know, as we got along in the project, I wanted the building to be the artwork. People look at our motorcycles that we make, our bikes that we ride. The more they look at the bike, the more impressed they are. And I want them to do the same way at the building. You know, if we have a really cool design like the murals that we paint on the wall, those are all done by hand. I wanted the motorcycles, a couple cool bikes to be in here so customers can kind of feel what we try to do here. And we kind of try to create, you know, neat things. The benches and tables up front were made by local artists, are made out of concrete. They have motorcycle parts.
He has great style. So for the most part, I mean, yeah, you guys see him on camera. He looks, you know, he's dressed to the nines every day he walks in here. So him and I see eye to eye with all of that stuff. If most of the time, if they gave us 3 options, him and I both like the same option.
The more people look at our shop, is the better it looks. And then we have 40 plus motorcycle helmets on a wall. Who does that?
So helmet wall, there's stories all over the place. We got about half the wall filled just from our stuff that was laying around the house. We came up with the idea, well, let's invite our customers to have an opportunity to tell their story and put their helmet on display. So when they come in, they've got that piece of Pops here that you know, makes them and solidifies them as that regular. The first thing they're gonna do is they're gonna bring their friends in and they're gonna be like, hey, this is my helmet. Like, you know, isn't this awesome? Like, they let me put it on display, they're gonna tell the story. And then we've also went as far as to create stories for our website so people can go through and actually connect with that customer or that helmet and see, you know, what is the deal? Why is it up there?
I'm very impressed with the quality that we hired. They know everybody's name the first time you're here. They know your drink. They're such great representatives of us.
It was not difficult to find baristas. It was more difficult to siphon through and filter through the amount of candidates that we had. I mean, I think we had around 300 people apply for 5 jobs. Picking through all of those applications, all of those resumes, that was kind of difficult. You know, you second guess yourself if you're making the right decision and then doing all those interviews. But I think after 2 days of interviewing, we had interviewed more people than we needed and had more candidates that we felt were strong options for us than we needed. Since then, have just proven to be amazing.
But I think what really makes us different is the Crystals and the Sammys and the Johnnies and the Ashleys and and the Laurens that basically talked to those 17,000 cups of coffee. They had to go to a barista first. When you have a smiling barista that calls you by name and has the coffee waiting for you as you walk to the front door, you can't beat that service. I had talked to a bunch of customers prior to opening the shop, asking them, do my own little survey. What do you like about your coffee shop, and what don't you like about your coffee shop? And most people say, I like my coffee shop, I just can't stand the coffee. And I thought, God, that's just like the cost of business. You gotta have a great cup of coffee. So we decided to make a great cup of coffee, but we were lucky enough, we got a great coffee company to work with. And this one we had heard about before from other people. They all talk about how great, Betdorf and Bronson is. Their reputation is great. They're from Olympia, Washington. I grew up in Seattle, Washington, so I thought, hey, the kind of coffee capital of the world, why not? They do a lot of pour overs from Africa, Ecuador, Central and South America. We do a private brand Betdorf and Bronson does for us called Eyes Open. We've done 17,000 cups of coffee plus. I've never had anybody complain about the coffee. Colin's a bit of a mad scientist making coffee.
So I just kind of relate it to food. I think of what I remember paired well with food. I try to make sure that our specials highlight that coffee flavor and don't just completely take away from it.
Hopefully down the road, 100% of the stuff we carry here and sell, we'll cook ourselves.
It's exciting, it's intimidating, but it's fun. I don't think there's a day that I walk in here, and that's for the motorcycle side too, that I feel like I'm working.
I don't know, I felt a little bit concerned that once we opened the doors, no one would show up. We'd done all that work, talked about it for so long, spent 8 months constructing. I think the complexity was a little difficult. Plus I'm not a guy that drinks coffee. I had to lean on my partner, to basically take the load of that. But again, I understood that coffee creates traffic. Traffic creates sales.
Seeing that growth and being a part of something that's, people tell us that we couldn't do and you shouldn't do, and doing it and making it successful, it's amazing.
I think you have to earn the next step. I don't know what the next step is. Customers will tell us what the next step is. I don't know if we could ever franchise something this size and this big. It wasn't even on my radar screen. I mean, will success be when they're lining up and they can't get in the front door and there's 80 people here every day? Maybe. I think a customer will tell us the next step. And right now, they're still telling us and helping us run a coffee shop.
I'd love to see us in other towns, other small towns, whether it is here in Georgia or we go out of the state somewhere else. But yeah, continue to build that brand, the sense of community that we have.
On a Saturday, it's really kind of fun. You got families drinking coffee and the kids eating waffles, and you got hardcore hardy guys, drinking their coffee and hanging out with the families, and customers are walking out in the parking lot looking at bikes. And then we got the guys that ride the Ducatis and the Triumphs and those motorcycles that are a little bit more European, and they're here hanging out with the guys that ride Hardys, with the families that come in just to watch it all. So it's on a nice weather on a Saturday and a Sunday. Our parking lot's a lot of fun to watch. We talked about it in January, started construction like day one of COVID, which was March. And then we sold our first cup of coffee in November 21st, and we sold almost 18,000 cups since. So not bad for a bunch of motorcycle geeks.